Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sunny McPeak with the California Emerging Technology Fund, and it is my pleasure to welcome you back to the second panel in Bridging the Digital Divide in California and the announcement around mobile apps and the competition that the Knight Foundation has made possible in partnership with the Federal Communications Commission. Chairman Janachowski just announced a very exciting opportunity for community developers to actually use public data, public available databases to develop applications for mobile devices that will reach those who are today the least included in our digital world. What we want to do with this panel is actually have a presentation by everyone around what is going on in California, and then open it up for a conversation with all of you. I do want to say for the audience that is watching us online and who has heard this announcement, that those of you in this room today represent the leaders in California. It is an amazing collection of community leaders, public officials, the provider community, who have been the pioneers, who've been pioneers for a long time in digital inclusion, in closing the digital divide, and who represent the heart and soul of the public-private partnership that the chairman talked about. We're really pleased that the Federal Communications Commission also recognizes the work that's been done in California, that we've come from the work that was very pioneering on your part in a very short time to being recognized nationally as a leader in digital inclusion. And that is a salute to all of you, a tribute to your work and your dedication. With that, I'm going to turn to our leader in terms of broadband for the State of California administration from the California Technology Agency, Special Counsel, a former member of the California Public Utilities Commission. Jack Lutz is here representing the commission because they're meeting right now. Our chairman of the California Emerging Technology Fund, Mike Peavy, who's president, could not be here but sends his regards. So the individual I'm introducing was a member of the California Public Utilities Commission and also a member of the Federal Communications Commission. No one else has ever served in all of these capacities. So that's pretty important in and of itself. And she has also chaired our California Emerging Technology Fund Board of Expert Advisors since our inception. So on behalf of the state of California, the Honorable Rochelle Chong.
Well, everybody, wasn't that quite an announcement? I'm sort of giggly about it. I wanted to welcome everybody to the event. Honestly, this is just a tremendous honor for the chairman of the FCC to choose the Bay Area, to choose California for the site of the announcement about this exciting mobile apps for communities contest. I wanted to personally extend a challenge to other states in the nation to follow the path of California. As I mentioned in my earlier remarks, California as a policy has made as many state databases available as it can for mobile developers to take that data and build apps particularly for our communities. And when we're talking about our communities, we're not just talking about the communities with fancy phones. We're talking about communities whose only access to the internet may be through their phone. And so we are so pleased to see the FCC and the Knight Foundation recognize the importance of getting information literally into the hands of traditionally underserved communities. Now, in California, we know from our work with the PPIC surveys annually done by Zero Divide and CETF, representatives here, that a number of our community members only get information through their smartphones, and they tend to be low income, they tend to be non-English speaking, they tend to be Hispanic or African American. And so in California, we are very much committed to getting information, particularly state, local, and government information, to all communities, which includes these traditionally underserved communities. So we are delighted to see a spotlight put on the need for this and to see money being placed out there for a contest so that we can get these apps developed for the entire population in the United States. So we challenge other states today around the nation to follow California. We have made a mobile template available for free for California applications. So if anyone needs information about that, we encourage them to go to m.ca.gov, and you will find information there about how to develop apps consistent with the state's template. Also at my agency, the California Technology Agency, Carolyn Lawson and our group is also an information source for anyone who is interested in developing those apps. Also, we would want to speak directly to the local governments. They also have absolutely fantastic data sets, and we challenge them to make their data sets available so that very uniquely local applications can be built for those communities. And particularly, I would like to encourage our rural communities who feel sometimes that they're off the information superhighway to think hard about what they can offer maybe to match in a contest to develop a uniquely local application for their region. We would love to see and facilitate those types of mobile applications also. Thank you very much, and I appreciate being here representing the state.
It is my pleasure to introduce the next two speakers on behalf of the California Telehealth Network. The Federal Communications Commission a few years ago announced a telehealth pilot program for the nation and invited applications that required match funding. The California Emerging Technology Fund is actually a funding partner, an investor in the California Telehealth Network, and we're very pleased to see this important application of broadband to healthcare that makes life easier for all Californians. Eric Brown is the Chief Executive Officer of the California Telehealth Network, and Dr. Tom Nesbitt is the pioneer in California, recognized nationally in telehealth and telemedicine from both UC Davis and here in his capacity as co-chair of the California Telehealth Network Board of Directors. So, Eric and Tom.
All right, well, good morning, everybody, and I'm excited to be here this morning. I got a chance to say thank you to the guy whose agency funds the California Telehealth Network, Chairman Janikowski, and at the same time, make a bid for more money from the FCC because, as I'll explain in a minute, the project is off to a great start, and we're quickly seeing that there's going to be a need for services beyond even what the original vision was. So for those of you who may not be familiar with it, the California Telehealth Network is a statewide broadband network that's being deployed in the state of California to provide services primarily targeted initially to rural and medically underserved communities. Medically underserved generally refers to urban areas where you may have population density, but you don't have access to health care. We were initially funded through a award from the FCC's Rural Healthcare Pilot Program. It's a $22.1 million award. It's the largest single state award granted at this point. It covers 85% of the cost of deploying broadband to these rural healthcare pilot program eligible sites. We're very fortunate here in the state of California that the California Emerging Technology Fund, Sonny's organization, put up the match for the remaining 15%. So we're one of the few states where 100% of the deployment costs for this network are covered. In addition, we have the California, through the CPUC, the Public Utilities Commission, the California Teleconnect Fund provides a 7.5% of reoccurring revenue credit. So it allows us to go lease broadband circuits for healthcare sites in rural and medically underserved areas of the state. We currently offer all sites at least a T1 or 1.5 meg connection, but we have the capability to do pretty much anything that they'd like us to do. Most of our sites, remember, these are rural, mostly rural sites. 65 to 70% of the sites right now are taking T1s. If you think about some of the more remote areas of the state, Death Valley, some places in Imperial County, or any of the eastern Sierras or the northeastern corner of the state, many of these healthcare sites, if they can get access to broadband, it's very expensive and often unreliable. So I know some folks will say, well, why are you doing a T1? Because actually in some areas of the state, that's a huge step up from what sites have available today. But we also offer 6, 10, and 45 meg circuits, and we're seeing great uptake on those as well. We call it a medical grade network. And what we mean by that is sites that are connected to the CTN have a direct point-to-point connection. Their traffic, all traffic that rides on the network is never exposed to the public internet. Okay, so we think that's very important from a security and performance standpoint. If you think about what happens when there are times of national disaster or emergency, people get on the internet. And we think it's very important that our healthcare sites excuse me, have the capability during those time frames to allow their traffic to travel without competing with all the other traffic. Secondly, the architecture of the network utilizes MPLS architecture, which basically means we can prioritize the types of data streams that travel across the network first. So if you think about, again, the example of an emergency room doc that's doing a consultation for a remote healthcare site, you wouldn't want that video transmission to be interrupted. And so we have the ability to tag those bits of data and make sure that they travel across the network first. So that's what we mean by medical grade network. We're in some very exciting discussions right now with a variety of applications providers who are looking at leveraging the capabilities of this network. It's, we have over 850 sites that have been deemed eligible to participate in this Rural Healthcare Pilot Program subsidy. We're taking additional applications every month. We are in the process of activating circuits. We started just before the Christmas holidays on kind of a go slow, make sure we know what we're doing rate. We're up to about 30 sites, and we're planning to activate 20 to 30 sites a month. AT&T is our statewide master vendor, which means we lease the circuits from AT&T. In instances where the site is located outside of the AT&T footprint, AT&T arranges for the last mile connection. We recently announced, in conjunction with what we're doing, let me back up. So in conjunction with the infrastructure money that we have from the Rural Healthcare Pilot Program and the Emerging Technology Fund, we last fall, along with UC Davis, were awarded ARA money, a BTOP grant, Broadband Technology Opportunity Grant, which helps fund the operating expenses of the CTN, but also goes further in terms of helping us in the deployment of 15 what we call technology-enabled e-health communities. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Nesbitt and let him talk a little bit more, because as we talk about applications, you know, it's one thing to deploy the broadband. It's quite another to figure out what applications ought to ride on the network to help leverage the network that we're building. And we're excited about some of the proposals we're seeing from some of these e-health communities that we think will prove out to be great applications for expansion in the long term. So, Tom?
Sure. Well, thank you, and thank you, Sonny, for your nice comments. You know, I work at a academic health system, and we are do $200 million worth of research per year at that institution. We have a lot of grants, and we're discovering new things. We have a series of buildings that are cancer researchers. But I try and remind all of us at our institution and everybody I talk to, that if we discover the cure for cancer, but only half the people with cancer have access to that cure, we only discovered half the cure for cancer. That if we don't get the science, the medical science and the medical expertise to people who need it, it's worthless. It isn't good enough just for us to say, to put it in a journal and have, people at Sloan Kettering or MD Anderson or our UC Davis NCI and National Cancer Institute Cancer Center get it. If there are people out in communities, underserved communities that don't have access to that science is not valuable. And so that's really one of the themes that kind of drives what we're trying to do here. Yes, it's critical that we have the infrastructure and that's secure and has the quality of service we need to move expertise from one place to another. But we have to also begin to develop these broadband-dependent applications that really improve the quality of healthcare. The other thing I'd like to say is there's really two important kinds of information that are information expertise that are critical for quality health care. One is information about individuals, about patients. What their medical record is, what allergies they have, what problems they have, etc. There's a lot of effort going on, a lot of money being spent on electronic medical records right now, electronic health records and personal health records. And one of the things about the network is our network's going to be able to move that information from one place to another to where that patient is. But the second kind of information is the expertise that applies to that patient. And unfortunately, that expertise is maldistributed in this state and in this country. In this state, there's a lot of expertise that exists in urban areas, particularly along the coasts. And some of that expertise doesn't get to patients with rare kinds of arthritis in the Central Valley and those kinds of things. What we're trying to do is not only to lay the digital highway for healthcare, for that kind of information to flow from places with the expertise to places without the expertise. But we're also trying to encourage and incent and train people how to use the technology that actually moves those kinds of expertise from one place to another. So Eric mentioned our BTOP grant, our Sustainable Broadband Adoption money. $9.1 million came from the federal government. We have $4.7 million that's coming from match partners in that. And one of the things we're doing is supporting the operations of the California Telehealth Network. A second thing that we're doing is we're creating a lot of training materials, very, very extensive. I don't think there's probably as big of an array of training materials that range from how to do telemedicine to how to use electronic health records to change management in a federally qualified health center in terms of adopting technology. Those kinds of materials are being developed by experts from around the state and country. And those will be available to people whether or not you're part of this program. We're trying to figure out ways to make those training materials available. But the third thing that Eric spoke about is these model e-health communities. And we put out an RFP, and we got 39 communities that applied. We're in the process of selecting those communities. And let me just tell you what that means. These are communities, and self-defined. People can define their community. It may be a group of federally qualified health centers and a public health department and a tribal site. But what we're looking for are communities that are coming together to utilize that technology to improve the quality and accessibility of healthcare services in the community. And some of the sites that we have prioritized are clinics, hospitals, community colleges, tribal sites, libraries, public health, county mental health, those kinds of facilities. And the idea is that if those can begin to work together and exchange information, if the emergency department at the local hospital can connect to the skilled nursing facility and prevent a transport that's unnecessary because, somebody had a fever and they can do something very quickly, or if we can use the community college to train, that is training medical assistants. If we can make a broadband connection out there and provide, expertise from a university setting to provide better training. If we can connect out to a tribal site, if we can connect to the library to provide broadband access for people not only to get online and get enrolled in Medi-Cal, but also for a doctor at the federally qualified health center to do a prescription for someone to go out to the public library and learn about chronic disease management in their language and in their culture from materials that we put on that computer. I think that community gets healthier. So the communities are defining how they're going to use their broadband connections to link together to improve accessibility and quality of healthcare. And we're very, very excited about that. We hope by June to be making announcements about those communities. There's some urban, there's some rural that I'm sure we'll have. They'll be throughout the state. And I think they're going to serve as models for other communities to learn how to use broadband effectively to improve the health care of the people in their area. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eric and Tom. I want to also acknowledge we have a director of the board of CTN also with us, Laura Gilmore from the Department of Managed Healthcare Services, or Department of Managed Healthcare in California. Was part of my agency when I had the opportunity to work for the state. I think it's amazing what is going on in California in that you have the University of California in the same room with all the other state agencies and with the providers and with investors. And it's an alignment of those interests that actually is part of, if you will, the secret sauce of why is it working in California. Chairman Janikowski talked about public-private partnerships, and that's what is represented here today. It's literally the government working closer with its own people who are the bosses in a democracy, but it is getting everyone in the same room. You've heard from Barry Hathaway about the Stride Center that is a partner with the California Emerging Technology Fund. We've got many other partners in this room. So Occur with David. We've got the Reliatech that was introduced, Ben. We've got Carrot. We've got OTX. There was the Digital 101. We've got the Latina Chicano Foundation. TechSoup. Who have I missed that wants to shout out that they're a partner? And you are the Caminos. Thank you so much, Jesse. I appreciate you. And of course, Zero Divide, which is, Zero Divide is our partner in doing the surveying, as Rochelle Chong mentioned, so that we keep tracking what's going on. And then, of course, EmpowerNet. I'm not going to miss Joe and EmpowerNet. Who else is sitting in this? Youth Radio. Thank you. You have to declare yourselves if I'm not seeing you. Who else have I missed? Yes, Microsoft. And Microsoft has been a partner with our School to Home program. Who else is in this room are all of the companies. So you all heard the reference to many of them. Of course, CETF is capitalized by AT&T and Verizon. So Eric and Kurt are here, but we've also got Comcast. So John is here. We've got Time Warner. We've got Cox. Which other providers are in this room? T-Mobile. Okay, that you're being acquired by some other company at this point, right? A merger? the AT&T folks. So now here's the pitch I'm going to make. AT&T and Verizon agreed with the PUC to be investors in CETF. We keep telling the rest of you, you also can be investors and partners, and we want you to be that way. And truly working with all of the community organizations that I just called out directly is going to be a far better way to close the digital divide than us doing it only with one side of the equation or the other. As I turn to talk or introduce Barry, he's speaking on behalf of all of you. And I want to also acknowledge the CETF team who's here. Susan Walters, who is our Senior VP for all of our grant applications. Luis Arteaga, who is our director. They want to... these people clapping for you want more money. I mean, you understand what's going on. Luis Arteaga, that is heads up our emerging markets and our Get Connected program that you see here. We had both Audrey Chang and Jennifer Riggs, who are here, that are our, thank you, there they are, who do our NTIA program. So Jennifer is back there. So the team from CETF is really the one who makes sure that we work closely with our partners and they succeed. So with that, Barry, again, on behalf of all of us here, we want to thank you and the Stride Center team and your social venture companies that have Reliatech and EmpowerNet for making this such a wonderful event today and getting everyone the food in this room. So thank you. Barry Hathaway.
Well, thank you, Sunny. It really is amazing for the Stride Center to be sort of the host of an event like this. We're very honored and very pleased for that. And I'm glad that you waited until the last minute, Sunny, to tell the other grantees that I'll be representing them. Because I'm not sure they would have seen that in the same light that you do, so no, I'm kidding. They would have been all over me to say, don't forget this and don't forget that, and I would have forgotten it all, I'm sure. Yeah, I want to acknowledge a couple of things from the front here. The Stride Center has been around since 1999, originally founded as Street Tech. In fact, the founder, Paul Lam, is here today. And we have been really focusing on this idea of poverty alleviation and have known from the very beginning that technology was really the key to a lot of doors that the clients we want to serve needed. And over the years, we've grown our programs so that we're sort of addressing a continuum of the digital divide, if you will. We have very much of a start to nearly end, if you will, from our perspective. We are currently under the auspices of a terrific grant from the stimulus funding, that is the Access to Careers and Technology grant, and it's a really amazing and welcome recognition that there are careers in IT that will sustain our community members. And so I want to say a little bit about that. But before I do, I want to acknowledge that the federal government has stepped in with this stimulus funding to help us in this moment. But all along, we have been being supported by companies like CETF and Microsoft and Wells Fargo, and I hope very soon, Ken, Comcast. And it would be really great if AT&T were stepping up to that as well. So we have been around for quite a long time, working with the technology companies in this community to not only get support for our programs, but to place our students. So let me talk a little bit about the continuum that we're talking about. You've heard a lot about this idea of how broadband itself is a tool for our communities, the aspects of our communities. Now we're talking about those elements of our communities that are not getting that access today. So let's bring it down to our very own community right here in Oakland. We have a tremendous need in Oakland. I want to have you picture an individual that will help me to illustrate the points that I would like to make today. Imagine a young single parent, all right? And imagine the things that they're facing. Let's talk about a young single parent who's out of work right now. And the things that young single parent is going to need every single day. They're going to need to be able to apply for a job. They're going to need a job. They're probably going to need some kind of training if they're in the situation that most of the people that we're talking about are in. She might have medical problems with her children that she is not going to have access to getting online to see if she doesn't have a computer at home. She might need to know where she can get the best price for something, where the best schools are, where the local providers of services are. She might want to apply for services that she has access to but can't get to. Without the simple use of a computer at home and the ability to have broadband access at home, that young single parent is at a tremendous disadvantage, tremendous disadvantage. If we can bring to her the most basic of resources, a computer and access to technology, and let's not stop there because that's really not enough. Let's make sure that she has some training so she knows how to use technology. And let's make sure she has access to some high quality tech support if in fact her computer goes down. Now, what kind of position is this young woman in? Now she has access to all the things that we just talked about. And suddenly her world is opened up in a completely different way. And let's take it one step further. Let's imagine that she could actually become adept enough at technology, she could get a job in the technology field. Let's talk a little bit about the technology field from a jobs perspective. This is a field that comes with a credential in the form of technical certifications that are recognized by employers across the world. And these credentials don't require a 2 or 4 year degree to get, they require training and passing the exam. So a person who's in a very underserved position gets a thing called a credential that opens doors for them in the field. The IT field offers good pay even at the entry level, so they can actually hope to not just get out of poverty, but to stay out of poverty. And the staying out part comes from good pay, but it also comes from this upward mobility that the IT field offers to people. So if you advance your certifications, get another certification and another, you begin working your way through the field, there's an incredible career ladder in the IT sector that is ideal for somebody who's coming from this potentially lack of education and lack of other skills. And importantly, very importantly, there are going to be jobs for this person when they finish the training that they're going through. Can you imagine a sector of our economy today that is not sitting on a foundation of technology? Everything that we're hearing today, apps development, mobile technology, cloud computing, the medical industry is moving toward online records. There's going to be a tremendous amount of technology in there. Everything that we're doing as in our economies are moving toward technology more and more. We have to recognize that that means that there are jobs for people there as well. But here we have a very difficult population to serve because they don't have access to these things. They don't have access to technology. They don't have access to broadband. They don't have access to training that's going to not just give them a technical certification, but teach them how to be in a professional environment. So all of these things we can do with technology, frankly. So we can take them from very basic digital access to basic digital literacy, to more deep digital literacy, to actually careers in IT. So the Stride Center that's what the Stride Center is doing, that's what OTX West is doing, that's what OCUR is doing, that's what all of us are doing. We're in some place on that continuum. So at the Stride Center, we have a couple of things that I think it's important that are funded by this proposal that are helping us to do this work. One is our technology business I mentioned, Reliatech. Now Reliatech is a straight up technology support business. We're the Geek Squad, but we don't have geeks at the Geek Squad. We have Stride Center graduates at Reliatech. Ben Delaney, by the way, is the CEO of Reliatech. Reliatech is hiring graduates from the Stride Center. Everybody except for Ben, who works there, is a graduate of the Stride Center. We provide paid internships to 30 individuals a year. That number is growing, and volunteer internships to those who want them. So they're getting work experience, and we know that somebody who has an internship will have a much greater potential of getting a job when they're finished, because that internship, that work experience is golden in terms of the potential of getting a job. So Reliatech helps us very much by not only providing jobs and internships for our students, but provides great quality, a quality equal to the quality of the OTX West refurbished computers, product that are going out into the community and giving access to that young single mother who would not otherwise have access to a computer. And Reliatech positions itself, its stores in low-income communities, so people in those communities have access to good quality, low-cost tech support. And by the way, even for somebody who's not low income, it's a great deal and great service. So feel free to find us and use our services. We'd be thrilled to have you. The other thing that we're doing, and this is largely funded by the ACT proposal and CETF, is the EmpowerNet launch that we've just done in November. EmpowerNet is essentially a consulting business that is vetting best practices and helping nonprofit organizations launch those best practices with tools on our website, empowernetcalifornia.org, consulting resources through EmpowerNet, in some cases grants to help organizations launch those programs. But our idea is launching best practice programs into nonprofits across the state of California to get these digital literacy initiatives moving in a much faster way. And right now we're launching A+ training programs all at the Stride Center. So between Reliatech and EmpowerNet and all the other organizations, we really are making a significant difference in our communities around this digital literacy and digital divide, crossing the digital divide. And I just want to say in closing, it is such an honor to be here among all of you and at this table, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. The Knight Foundation CEO, Damien Foreman, was on the first panel, and I had the opportunity to brief him this morning on what are we doing in California. The Knight Foundation is based in Florida, in Miami, and so although he's pretty familiar with the West Coast, it has lots of partners and grantees, I think he actually became quite excited about the amazing spectrum of activity that is going on. One of the parts of the continuum of breaking through this digital divide is not only getting IT into the training of folks who need better jobs so that they have a future, and that is what the Access to Careers in Technology does. That's a ARA, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, NTIA program that has literally, we have 11 partners. So Caminos and Youth Radio and Occur, EmpowerNet, along with Stride, are all part of our partners that we have. Latino Chicano community as part of the BA program. So we have another NTIA grant that has 8 partners. This is a pretty amazing effort, if you will, to bring that many community-based organizations together as partners and try to provide the interface with the federal government. We also have school to home. There are 500 plus low-performing middle schools in California. And guess what? Low-performing middle schools usually sit in the middle of low-income neighborhoods. The very people that we're trying to reach to bring online, the poorest, maybe not English-speaking, don't have as high an education attainment as the rest of Californians. Those Californians that we're trying to bring into the digital world are the parents of the kids sitting in those low-performing middle schools. And all of the companies that are here, AT&T, Comcast, Verizon, Time Warner, Cox, Microsoft, helped us design this program to integrate technology into the teaching and the learning. It involves parents being able to use that computer that the kid gets in school, it actually goes home. And so this is an amazing effort, once again, vision in California that is a blockbuster. It is not a pilot. It is not this notion we're going to do a few schools. It is we have a commitment to get to all 539 low-performing middle schools in California, and with this strategy, bring those students into the 21st century and their parents across that digital divide. So we are very excited about that partnership as well. In order to raise the awareness of their parents and all of the folks not online, if you will, we have our Get Connected program. And we have Lorna Walsh here to talk about the Community Technology Network and what it means to actually get to the very folks that we hope will be a part of digital inclusion and to show the value of the technology. So thank you very much, Lorna, for being here.
Thanks. I'm stepping in last minute for Cami Griffiths, who's the Executive Director of CTN. CTN being Community Technology Network.
The other CTN
not
here.
to be confused with the other CTN. So I was hoping to pass myself off as Cami today, because CTN is very much Cami's baby, and I'll talk a little bit about what it's aiming to do. I'm volunteer manager. In a kind of cruel irony, Cami is elsewhere delivering a webinar for TechSoup on volunteer management through social networking, so we've got this really wrong today. So CTN has been around for about two and a half years. Barry can give you some of the history if you'd like, because Barry is formerly our chair of the board. We focus at the moment on San Francisco, just San Francisco County at the moment, and we are a partnership organisation, as the word network implies. We work to support providers in the community, helping people get online and get some really basic skills. So even before smartphones and mobile applications are being used to help people further, we are really at the foundational level of helping people really get to grips with some of the technology from the start, and just even learning how to use a mouse. It's really quite simple. So CTN is 1.5 staff, I'm the half. So we managed to cover a lot of ground with our partners. So the kinds of services that we provide our partners are through our website, ctnbayarea.org. We have a directory of computer centres, which we're expanding all the time. And we have a duty to get, I think there's at least 200 centres. You'd be surprised at how many public access and open access computer centres there are in just San Francisco alone. Our directory will cover all of the Bay Area in time. Resources, we also have a directory of resources online for both learners and trainers. So the volunteers that we recruit to help people in the community will be able to access a lot of the resources through our website as a kind of one-stop shop for some of that material. So there's stuff from Microsoft, stuff from Google, there's some stuff that they've created, but also stuff that's been created by communities that's been most helpful to them. And this is a tool that's aggregating resources from all over the country and from further afield, because obviously there's a lot of best practice going on in other parts of the world, Europe in particular. I'm here to fly that flag, that we can learn from here. So our resource is a good draw for a lot of that material. The other thing, and the thing that I'm responsible for, is recruiting volunteers to go into communities and into computer centres as lab monitors, just to be there if people are in a computer lab and are struggling. But also our volunteers are helping people through specific classes and courses, whether it's from job search through to accommodation search. Those are some of the biggest areas that we help people with. And the volunteers are really helping people, the kind of people that Barry talked about, from some of the most vulnerable and low-income communities in San Francisco. And CTN really believes that actually we have a major responsibility to these people who are currently digitally excluded. It's not just about, oh, wouldn't it be nice if people were able to find a job more easily? No, we owe it to people. We have created a world where everything's moving online. You know, it suits corporations to have everything online. It's a cost-cutting exercise as well as a, making life easier exercise. But in the process of pushing forward, we are leaving people behind, people who formerly, could cope more than adequately with the services available. So I wanted to make that absolutely clear that the services CTN is providing, it's because we have a duty of care to people who have been left behind by the innovation and the rush to make things as fast, as quick, and as online as possible. It's also important to know, to really explain what we mean by digital literacy too. I mean, CTN really believes that literacy isn't just about knowing what button to press. It's the same thing as being able to read. You might be able to read the words, say the words, identify the words, but that's really just a part of it. So literacy for us is about access, it's about understanding, and it's about creation. So the first step, and this is what CTN we do primarily, is to give people access to the equipment, to some of the basic skills, to some of the really, really basic language that they need to be able to speak. The understanding bit is where it gets more complicated. It's about, well, actually, how do we use that knowledge that we have most effectively? And you can see this perhaps in young people who are arguably the most digital literate generation ever. I mean, there's 3-year-olds able to use an iPad. It's frightening. But they know the technology, they know what button to press, they know where to go for stuff, but how are they actually using it? Are they being incredibly narrow in their use of the internet? Are they just looking at it to play games? Are they just focusing on very specific sites? It might just be they might spend the whole time on Facebook. Does that mean that they are digitally literate? We would argue that perhaps not quite. There's a long way for them to go before they're using that well. And the final part of the literacy equation, I suppose, is the creation. We don't want people just to be passive consumers. We want people to be able to use their knowledge of technology to create stuff, to be good digital citizens, to be able to contribute to democracy and debate and conversation in their community and to contribute back. So that might be creating their own website, it might be creating a video that they can put up online. That's the kind of most advanced step, and when all of those elements come together, then you have a truly digitally literate person. So CTN is really part of the solution, but there's a whole range of other things that can be going on that partners in this room and others can help develop that basic access. So what else did I have to say? Yes, we're not looking at the moment at mobile devices. CTN isn't currently doing anything around that, although increasingly people's only access to the internet will probably be through their mobile device, or at least that's their principal point of contact. So one of the challenges CTN has is constantly keeping up with that innovation. And in time, I expect in the next few years, we'll be looking at getting a lot more activity around mobile devices specifically. So if somebody has one, it's teaching them to get the most out of that device and helping them along that route. So what else do I have to say?
I think actually you did a great job stepping in and being the half. And I appreciate that. I know my staff thinks that they live this notion of, I tell them you only have to work a half a day and you can choose whichever 12 hours those are. So I presume that you are, that's the kind of half time you put in as well, Lorna. So thank you so much for that. We actually are going to take your comments, and I'm going to actually call upon the PUC first. So Jack and Michael and Robert can decide who's speaking. But this is fair warning. You're going to have to come up and use this microphone because we want you to be recorded. And this was Rochelle's idea that we actually asked you to talk about initiatives at the PUC, followed by others who want to come forward. In terms, and get your comments recorded for this broadcast. The work that Zero Divide and CETF and the Public Policy Institute of California are doing on the surveying of how Californians use broadband will be helpful in this notion of how to close the digital divide, or mobile, what can we do with mobile applications? And thinking in terms of what's just going on here in Oakland, I wanted to announce that Mayor Gene Kwan of Oakland and Joe Gross with Sustainable Systems and our partners here in Oakland, OTX and Occur, will be launching Get Connected Oakland in a week or so on the 28th of April. So each community across California, all 58 counties and 481 cities, we are attempting to get to adopting Get Connected resolutions and then taking the next step to spread that word. To date, we have 42 of the 58 counties who have adopted these resolutions. So that is a vast majority of California's counties, and we're getting to now all of the cities. So with that, Jack, if you'll head this up, and Michael, if you also want to come forward to announce what we're doing in California with initiatives, and then anybody else who would like to make a comment that we can record on this webinar, if you'll just line up, because we need to have you speak into the microphone and see your beautiful and handsome faces. And the thing that also you might want to just talk about and share with everybody in this room, including the panel, is given that there is the National Broadband Plan that has been adopted by the FCC, and that we in California are pursuing a goal of getting to, by 2015, 98% of all households having access to high-speed broadband, and 80% of all Californians actually subscribing, using it at home. What else do we need to know? You've heard, or what else do we need to do? You've heard a lot about what's going on, but we want to sort of help lift up the agenda in California and align it with the Federal Communications Commission's National Broadband Plan. Jack Lutza.
Thank you, Sunny, and thank you for inviting me and my colleagues to comment on what the PUC is doing to actually implement the kind of partnership concept that you have so eloquently talked about this morning. I've worked at the PUC for generations of commissioners now, and California, I'm proud to say, has been a leader in making sure that the most advanced services are available to Californians for all the benefits that everybody in this room knows that they provide. Some of the things that we have done and continue to do and are thinking or in the process of doing, a lot of you have spoken about our California Teleconnect Fund, which since 1999 has been providing discounted advanced telecommunications services to schools, libraries, community-based organizations, and the rural health element is one that we have been particularly focusing on and developing in connection with the state CTN. And that program has grown from a $10 million program as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, and I think this year the budget is about $70 million. We also were innovative when Commissioner Chong was an acting commissioner to implement the Advanced Services Fund, which really addresses the issue of connecting unserved and underserved communities in California to the digital world. And we've given out about $65 million in grants to a wide variety. I think there's 57 projects that we're funding in order to bring advanced services and broadband to places that otherwise wouldn't necessarily get it in a timely way that serve the communities that need those services. We're also, and important to mention there is the through legislation that CETF and the Commission jointly sponsored last year, the California legislature and the administration agreed that the Advanced Services Fund was beneficial enough to California that they gave us the direction to extend that program for about 5 more years and gave us the authority to collect $125 million in revenues in order to continue the grant program and also to develop that partnership concept by working with regional consortia on determining where infrastructure is needed. Also, we're getting into the area of promoting adoption and education and all the kind of things that people on this panel have discussed this morning. And the Commission is in the process of developing modifications to our original program, which we think was a great success, but we've learned a lot, and we're trying to integrate new features to make the program even better in the future. And we're also kind of a focal point in California for developing broadband mapping, and Michael Morris is sitting in the back of the room, works in the communications division and is the leader of the group that is charged with developing interactive maps. It's one of those online databases that Rochelle talked about, and it gives people who are interested in finding a provider, developers who are looking for areas to develop, and bringing lots of information that for years many people have said is an important thing to have, and we're right in the middle of We've gone online recently, and we're developing lots of features related to the statewide broadband map. And we're also the proud and happy recipients of Recovery Act funds to extend that project, and we're working with lots of other partners in the state university community and others to work on adoptions. Looking for mobile applications is a project that Michael could talk about in detail, but we're working with GIS types in the state university system to figure out where mobile broadband is available in California. And I could spend a lot of time talking about these things, but that's kind of a highlight of what we're doing, and the Commission is very committed to continuing to innovate in the area of making sure that Californians aren't just about phone service, but broadband is everywhere.
Thank you, Jack, so much for, on very short notice, in fact, no notice at all, being able to do such a great job. Give him a round of applause. Part of why this partnership is working in California, I think, Rochelle, is because there is, as I've said, and Chairman Janachowski said this morning, the public-private collaboration, but a Public Utilities Commission with commissioners who have vision about where is the world going. And there's been a lot of pioneering that's been done in California, thanks to you, to start the California Advanced Services Fund for President Peavy, and then Susan Kennedy, when she was a commissioner, to propose the California Emerging Technology Fund, that we sort of have these right ingredients, working with our regulators and the state government, the companies and the community organizations. We have time for two more comments. If anyone wants to be a part of this official digital record, to talk about what's going on in the community or in California. You all look so bright and so excited and not moving out of your seat. So does Ben? It's Paul. Paul Lamb is there. And then Ben. Okay, you two are making the remarks. And Paul, as you've heard Barry say, started Street Tech and what has evolved into Stride Center. Mr. Lamb.
Great. Thank you, Sunny. First of all, I just want to thank you and Rochelle for bringing the chairman here to Oakland. It's an amazing event, if you think about it. And the fact that he was here at the Stride Center instead of Google or Apple, et cetera, to make this announcement says a lot about...
Although we love Google and Apple.
We do. And actually, that's my... it's actually a question as opposed to a comment, and it's directed at you, Rochelle. We, since we're talking about mobile and mobile apps today, and you have talked about some of the wonderful work that the state is doing relative to government and apps, government services and apps, I'm wondering sort of out loud whether there's an opportunity to use your connections, meaning the state's connections, and your pulpit, as it were, to assist low-income communities in developing their own apps, both to put people to work in an emerging industry, as well as developing apps that are relevant to those people specifically, as opposed to having other folks develop apps and other mobile resources for them. So I'm wondering if you could address that, see it as an opportunity, and maybe encourage folks in this room to get involved in that regard.
Well, I think that's a fantastic idea, Paul. And in fact, because we have our community network through the efforts of CETF and others, I think we are perfectly positioned to gather that information about what the low-income communities want, and then to help guide developers, apps developers, to produce those apps and hopefully win a prize to pay for the app development. I think that's great. Paul, we're on it. Great idea. See, this is why we brought you all together, the best minds in California.
Yay, Paul. Woo! When I first met Paul, Tina, you get in line after Alicia. I am making exceptions to my own rules because I think there's too much brilliance in the room. When I first met Paul, he called himself Man on a Mission. And that's what his card said, you know. And the point I want to make is that just like Margaret Mead always said, never underestimate the ability of a small group of people to change the course of world history. Indeed, nothing else ever has. It's always a small group of people that are committed that change the course of history, and that is always because there's one or maybe two people who do something very courageous, very pioneering. And so, Paul, you've been that man on a mission. Ben.
Thanks, Sonny. And I'd like to add my thanks to you and Rochelle and the whole CTF team for bringing this event here. This is spectacular. And thanks to you all for being here. I wanted to do a little bit of lobbying, especially to the common carriers representatives in the room and everyone. One of the problems that we're having in getting broadband to everyone, especially in underserved and low-income neighborhoods, is the fact that people are transient and they don't have good credit reports. And it makes it very difficult for them to get a DSL line or a Comcast connection or any other permanent internet broadband connection. So to help eliminate that problem, Reliatech, along with OTX West, Building Blocks for Kids, and a number of other organizations, are building free Wi-Fi networks to enable anybody with a Wi-Fi card to have a free connection to the internet. Now, there's two ways that we can allow this to happen. One is that recently the E-rate program that brings the internet to schools has started a trial of loosening up their rules so that the schools can share their high-speed connection. This is very important, and I urge any of you who have the opportunity to contact representatives at the PUC and in the legislature to encourage them to loosen up the E-rate program, because the schools have tons of bandwidth that's only used a few hours a day. The second thing I'd like to ask, especially to the common carrier representatives, is that you loosen up your terms of service. Because right now, your terms of service say those connections cannot be shared. We need those connections. We need to be able to hook up wireless radios to people's internet connections and share them. They are not being hogged. We are doing it in some locations now. I won't tell you because it's technically illegal. But we are throttling the bandwidth so that nobody is taking a whole lot, and a lot of people getting a little bandwidth is better than nobody getting any. So I urge you all to try and make these changes that will really enable us to cover that last mile and get everybody connected to the internet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. For the record, I want to say that if you have an agreement with the California Emerging Technology Fund, we require you to do everything to obey the laws. We do not allow funds to be used illegally. But we have very committed people. And in terms of the companies here, we're really appreciative that you're willing to continue to be our partners and listen and take to heart all this conversation. So I'm going to do, is it Alicia and then Tina, and then we will cut it off. Well, if you're, Roger, then you get to speak. I didn't realize you were staying in line. I thought you were just managing everything. Okay, Alicia, Tina, and Roger. Okay, Alicia.
Good morning, everyone. I'm with the Chicana Latina Foundation, and I wanted to let you know our goal in this project, we receive funding from CETF and from the federal government with a goal of signing up 1,327 new customers to the internet. Not customers, but being connected. We started last year, and it took a long time to work in the community, and it's what I really wanted to share, what it takes to do this work. One thing is we work mainly in the Latino community, in rural areas, and I wanted to say that that is a community that's not connected as much, and it's not because they don't care or want it. There are many impediments. Our program, if you sign up for the internet, we give you a desktop refurbished computer, fully loaded with antivirus, the whole thing. So there are people sign up and they're able to connect at home. And then in some cases up here in San Mateo County, we give classes. We're working in the Monterey County where they've received money, different program to set up hubs of computers to give classes. So we're connecting the community to that. This past quarter, January through March, we signed up 371 people to the internet. Wow. Yeah, it's really, we're trying to keep up with it. I think we've already used up all the computers that 2 refurbishing companies had. We had to lay off of them and found a different one in Chico. We're working with Reliatech also for computers. So, but what I wanted to say is that the work that we have had to do was to come into the community. You have to prove yourself that you're there for real. You have to work with the communities, organizations that are already there. This is what we have found. You connect with them, you're respectful of their work, and it begins to become a partnership. And that's what's really worked out for us, is to have these partnerships in the community. For instance, in the Salinas area, which is, we don't even have to leaflet anymore. It's word of mouth. It is amazing. We get 50 faxes every day of proof that people have signed up, and then you have to follow up and all of that. So anyway, in the Salinas area, it's become word of mouth. We've began to work with organization. We have a union that lets us use their area salon, Union Hall, I should say. Went into Spanish there for a second. Salon. Where we give the computers away. Well, this is a union that has been hit really hard. 80% of their people are out of work. So I'm working with them to give them some computers to set up in the Union Hall where they're going to get classes and hopefully be able to find work, maybe in a different area, et cetera. So that's the kind of partnerships we have set up, and it takes about 4 sort of touches or conversation with a person before they'll sign up. But now we're seeing the fruit of our labor, and so for those who are just starting, harvest will come. You just have to plant, and it will work out. And so thank you. We're very
thank you,
excited.
Alicia. Alicia did. Give her a round of applause. Alicia and the Chicana Latina Foundation led a workshop for for the regional consortia a couple of weeks ago at CSU Monterey Bay. And I think that's also a very interesting dynamic. Grassroots and treetops get brought together with the companies. You heard us talk about 1,327 people to be signed up. This is a result of us focused on outcomes, deliverables. I mean, it sort of gets emblazoned in everybody's mind because Susan and Luis are fierce about monitoring. Are these partners able to really get the job done? And in fact, yes, they can and they do. It's a lot of hard work. But you in the private sector get a really high return on investment. Your ROI by partnering with the CBOs and working with all of us who are taskmasters unlike others, you can't believe, they know that, you get a high ROI. So let's go to our partner Zero Divide. Tina.
I'm going to sit down.
Yes.
I'm going to beg for things. So this is a better position. So thank you for gathering all of us here. It's so great that everybody in this room is committed to underserved communities and moving the ball forward. So I want to make 2 pleas. And I'm making these pleas as an educator, a community activist, a technologist, an entrepreneur, as someone who grew up in one of these communities, right? So first plea, we need to create demand for government data. So we launched this great contest today, Apps for Communities. That contest is contingent upon us, regular people, having access to government data, which for the most part have been locked up, right? So it's so great that this data is being liberated finally. So I implore you to continue supporting open government efforts, specifically around releasing data to the public, that really represents a gold mine. A lot of folks in the Silicon Valley see this as the inputs that would help spur the next internet boom, right? And I've been watching the budget debates, and the fund that they had been allocating towards making government, more open. And I think it's called the Electronic Government Fund or something. They're proposing to cut it by 75%. So without these inputs, we can't possibly get to where we want to go in terms of reaching the potential that open data has for helping communities uplift themselves. So plea number 1, please support open government efforts, specifically open data. Plea number 2, education. So happy to hear that we're making connections with schools. That's a tremendous effort that you guys are undertaking, and hats off to you for going after that. So important. STEM education, really important. But I think there are other ways for people to plug in too, right? We need to cultivate civic leaders. Kids who aren't just in STEM, but maybe they just have a great idea. They love service learning or community activism, and they don't know how to code, but they have an idea of what app might be really helpful to their communities, right? So I implore you to support any type of educational initiative, youth leadership development programs that cultivate civic leadership, civic engagement, any type of program that challenges kids to merge, their passions with their skills and the needs that they see in the communities. Because what we're finding is that the developer community right now don't necessarily understand the types of problems that certain communities have. You just have to require, it requires a certain cultural literacy, really, to understand the nuances sometimes of how to solve certain problems. So first plea, support open data. Second plea, support young, emerging civic entrepreneurs.
Tina, thank you so much for those remarks. And for your, what I'm going to do, Roger, because you're going to be the capstone. You are the star to end this. But I wanted to just thank you and underscore what you had to say. First, the amazing, I think, again, trailblazing that the California Technology Agency, the state of California, with Rochelle Chong and Terry Takai there. Bill Maley is here also with the, there he is, Bill Maley with now the California Technology Agency, and Acting Secretary Christy Quinlan. Making this data is available is indeed a departure from the past, and it is part of that open government. And then thank you for giving that boost to education, and I just want to put the plug in for School to Home. It will close both the achievement gap and the digital divide in California. And it is entirely doable by just those of us in this room. I mean, it'll take a lot of work with schools, but those of us in the room have the ability to make that happen. Michael Morris, who does so much work in mapping and helping all of you get information, wanted to make this remark, and then I want to let him do that.
Two things. Jack mentioned the interactive broadband map. I'd invite everyone to visit that at www.broadbandmap.ca.gov, brought to you as from ERA grants, as well as the FCC's interactive map, which is different, but and also they work together very well, www.broadbandmap.gov. Finally, the other thing the state is doing is a result of legislation that was sponsored by State Senator Padilla last year. It's a California Broadband Council, and Sonny's on that council, as well as heads of many other state organizations, state agencies, representatives from the Senate and the Assembly. And the purpose there is to really get all of the agencies in the state working together to fulfill the broadband goals.
Thank you, Michael, for adding that information. When Lorna was speaking about the California Technology Network, Community Technology Network, the other CTN, besides the California Telehealth Network, I meant to mention that you can also get online in 4 different languages at getconnectedtoday.com. Lots of information about how to actually start using the technology, how to navigate the internet, and how to protect your children in terms of online internet safety. So everybody's been thrilled today that the Federal Communications Chairman, Janikowski, has been here today. They made a great announcement, and that this is, amazing that there's a spotlight on California and for the entire spectrum of California, from our companies to our communities. Well, that doesn't just happen because the FCC decides to come to California. There's always someone, as I said, who makes things happen. And in this case, one of the two primary interfaces between the FCC and California is going to do the wrap-up and be the capstone. And so Roger Goldblatt from the FCC worked with Ellen Saderwhite. I do want to mention Ellen, who was working closely with Roger, but to pull this all together. And they had changes thrown at them hourly, and still pulled off an amazing announcement and a great event with this conversation that's all been recorded and is being broadcast. So it's my great pleasure to thank you, Roger, for making it happen, and to ask you just to give us our closing words and our marching orders.
I just want to, is this on? You don't need
No, it is on, but it won't. You just, you have to speak into that so that it's being recorded. Yeah.
I just want to say, when you're from the FCC, usually people hate us. They just, we do a lot of events and they hate us. But basically, the chairman was coming out here to meet with a lot of people in Silicon Valley, and he said, I'm not going to come unless I can meet with people in community groups. And I want to announce this challenge. And, we almost didn't do this because there was a thing called budget. Like, even the federal government has a problem too. And so we were going to not do this. And he's essential. He would have gotten paid, but there's no travel money. But anyway, so we call Rochelle, who we work with a lot, like on digital transition and a lot of other things. Do you all know she used to be a commissioner at the FCC also? Very young when she was a commissioner. I think she was the youngest. She was extremely young. But anyway, we called her and we said, could you find us a really great venue that does something as far as what these applications are all about? And she said, well, there's this thing called the Stride Center. Then we got hooked up with Barry, and we did this. A week ago, we did a soft lunch in D.C. with this group called Youth Labs. And it was all these inner city D.C. kids, the youngest being 8 years old, who came up with an app for his little robot. But some of them, some were practical, some weren't. Like this girl, she was probably about 12. She had an application for what to wear to school that day. Like what is she worn, what matches what her friends and enemies were wearing. It was actually quite good. The one that impressed me the most was there was this high school guy who had a really hard time getting into college and finding out financing, and he did an application to help other people who are in similar situations. But if you know anybody who wants to apply, we don't have money, but the Knight Foundation. Is Damien here? But anyway, it's substantial money, and it really would be great if someone wins it. There's a lot. Anyway, I worked for a lot of chairmen. But anyway, so the chairman wanted to come. He wanted to come here. He really likes to hear these stories. He talks all the time about how we need to get more people on broadband, how it used to be like 30% of jobs you could only apply online, so you're kind of screwed. You're kind of not able to apply. Also, in certain states, I think you can't get unemployment insurance unless you apply online. Is that in California too? All right, it's kind of a mess. But anyway, I want to thank you all. This is, by the way, this will be on fcc.gov. We're going to archive this video. But really, the FCC really, it's kind of a cool place. I've been there like 11 years, and I've kind of went through periods where I didn't think they cared about people. But we really, really do. I wouldn't be doing this, and I wouldn't be working with, and Michelle wouldn't do it because she's smart enough to know when we're joking. But the chairman really wants this to happen, and that's really, really good. And I'm going to turn this off because I don't know how. Okay. Thank you all. But thank you all so much.
Roger,
thank you, Barry. Thank you, everybody in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you all for coming. And please enjoy the refreshments and some informal chat.
There's going to be a tour.
And there is a tour that Barry's going to lead.
In the lobby, in the reception area on the
Fourth floor reception area if you would like a tour of Stride Center, which would be worth your time.